Hey everyone, Lorelei here, Deputy Director of the Colonizing the Music Room. Thanks for dropping by. Today we wanted to spend a few minutes talking to you about language. Language has the ability to express and to communicate the deepest and most complex of human emotions. Having said that, language can also be assumptive, can also be lacking in some ways. You know, the words I choose to express to you, I am assuming that you hold the same meanings and definitions of those words. And in that case, when sometimes that doesn't line up, then we're prone to miscommunication, and that's where misinterpretation can happen. And so it's always very important that we are reflecting on the language we use and being able to correct ourselves when we use language that could be better. So this interview that you're about to see with the fabulous Alice, contributor to Decolonizing the Music Room and just fabulous all-around human being, spawned from the feedback we've been getting about and surrounding our terminology, Black, Brown, Indigenous People, or BBIP. So if you're newer to the organization, that term BBIP might be something that's new to you as well. This is just insight and a little sneak peek into how we think about that word, how people identify with that word and relate to that word, and how we at DTMR are always constantly aware and reflecting about our practices, which includes our language, and open to the need for it to be evolving and flexible to the situation at hand. You know, if we come to a point where we understand that now this term doesn't express everything it needs to express, then we need to be open and willing and humble enough to say, well, then it just needs to change. And so hopefully this is an insight into how that is evolving in our work and our organization that you're a part of as well. And hopefully you'll come away from this conversation entertained and also just maybe a little bit more deeper understanding of how we come about our words that we use and we choose to use amongst each other. So enjoy. So yeah, thanks again so much for wanting to meet and talk about this. And I don't think anything we're going to do is ever going to, like today anyways, is going to solve anything. But I definitely think it's interesting to get this conversation going and to have people understand like how we're trying to continue understanding and learning each other's viewpoints and how that reflects in like the words we choose and anything that becomes kind of part of DTMR. You know, I don't know. I know it's been a big learning experience for me to understand just where my gaps are and my just things I'm not aware of because I just haven't thought that way and I haven't considered that way. So I appreciate you bringing in your perspective. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Yeah.
I always love having conversation and talking about it. And yeah, I definitely hear you on just even the things that are being posted. Sometimes I'm just like, wow,
Mm-hmm.
I've actually never thought about that ever.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. So like I wonder I don't know if you can even think that first time you saw us use BBIP, you know, Black, Brown, Indigenous people, if you had any just kind of like first impressions, like how did it make you feel, like anything about that terminology that just kind of struck you?
Yeah, I think personally, I just found it confusing for
Mm,
me. I don't know that I felt included, nor did I feel like I was excluded. I just felt
right.
like it was this middle ground of haziness. And I was like, okay, it's like learning a new vocabulary word that you don't know how to use in a sentence, I
Right.
guess.
Right. Right. Right.
So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that is my first
Mm-hmm.
reaction to that.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because I mean, you brought it up, and then other people started bringing it up, which I'm grateful for that they were able to kind of say something about it, so it could like bring it to our minds, and we could think about it. Yeah, it just hadn't dawned on me. Like I don't know, for some reason, I don't know if it's because of my positionality as a Filipino American, all the kind of stuff growing up, and that it was so easy for me to say brown and that's where I was. But speaking to other Asians, they were like, no, that's kind of not where I'm feeling the
Yeah,
identity.
but I
Yeah.
had learned from
Definitely.
really young that I'm yellow. from my parents as well, who just said that, and it wasn't like anything demoralizing. It just was, until I learned more about the history of the word yellow, and just how that's a very colonized way of describing Asian
Mm-hmm.
people, more specifically East Asian people. So with like current times and like yellow peril, or like fighting
Mm-hmm.
for yellowness, or reclaiming that word, it's just all kind of
Right.
a strange, hazy territory that
It
then, and
is.
then I'm just like, okay, but then BBIP, so
Right.
they're like
Right.
two very far lanes, it feels.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it's so funny that you bring up the idea of like reclamation and reclaiming words, and I completely believe in that power. It's just so funny because it's not funny. It's just interesting because we can start reclaiming things in our within our own community, but then other people who are not in that community start hearing us reclaiming it and thinking that it's okay. And I still kind of have a hard time
Yeah.
like, wait, it's not okay yet, not yet.
Right. It's
Yes.
like, yeah, it's this kind of like strange, like I can call myself yellow, but no one else
No,
who's not
yes,
Asian
right,
can
right,
say
right,
that.
right.
And it doesn't function the same way as other words either, because I'm not about to call my friend yellow either.
No. Right.
So it feels
Right.
like individualistic in that way.
Uh-huh. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Yeah. I haven't ever identified as yellow. And I don't know, there must be just something about that piece of water that separates or that just makes it hard for me to, I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
know.
well, I mean, honestly, even learning that there are Asian people who consider themselves brown. Like, I didn't
Mm-hmm.
learn that until my adult life, or interacting with just other non-East Asian
Right.
people.
Right.
And then people would really proudly say that, and I would be pretty surprised at it,
Mm-hmm.
because it's
Mm-hmm.
not in my vocabulary.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I was like, I was just kind of looking at like just the history, and I'm wondering if it has to do with like, I mean, the history of the Philippines being colonized by the Spanish, and it's just like there's like a common OG colonizer there, and I don't know if it's correct in my very brief reading, but I mean, they came and they tried to do some stuff in China and the mainland over there, but not really, like maybe on the coasts and stuff. They didn't really get into the country and colonize
No,
all of it,
not to
right?
my, I mean, also
Yeah.
not to my brief
Uh-huh.
understanding of that also. But I guess like in my brief reading of just the yellow and the context of it, I definitely have to just read more.
Mm-hmm.
I read a couple of things that was talking about Carl Linnaeus, I think, the
Mm-hmm.
taxonomist,
Mm-hmm.
who basically first started to describe East Asian people as, I think the Latin word is luridus, or basically like a pale yellow. And
Oh.
that's one theory of how that term originated, which is really
Uh-huh.
interesting, but also terrible
It
at the same
is.
time.
Right,
Um,
right.
it's like, okay, once again, it is another white European person who decides
Uh-huh.
what this
Yeah.
is. Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
that's problematic too.
I don't know. And I think that's what the thing is. Like, I'm looking at BBIP, and you got black, brown, just colors, and indigenous people, right? And that's not a color. And then, so how do Asians fit in that? Is it going to be a color? Is it going to be the Asian as in, like, I don't know if that's like a geographical kind of thing, connotation? And then trying to, it's almost like it's not even parsing out Asia, because what you're trying to do is trying to find a common word to describe everybody who is in Asia or part of Asia. So it's not like parsing it out, it's like compositing it and trying to find something that meets everybody's I don't want to say satisfaction, but just makes everybody feel included in that. And I don't know how to do that.
Yeah,
you
I
know?
mean, really the only word I can think of is Asian.
Yeah.
And there is no other word I can even think of to describe
Yeah.
and, yeah, synthesize. I don't know.
I synthesize is a good word. Yeah, I can't think
Yeah.
of one. And then speaking to my other friend like yesterday, she's like, "Well, I don't identify as Asian because she's from India." And she's like, "I mean, I guess technically I am in Asia, but I don't know how Middle Eastern or Asia or India or any of those kind of parts of the Asian continent necessarily subscribe to being Asian." So
Yeah, that's
I
really
don't know.
interesting too, because it makes me wonder like what aspect of their history made them either feel like they're Asian or not Asian,
Mm-hmm.
and if that's
Mm-hmm.
like even considered exclusive or just like
Right.
we're just separate bodies.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know when we were trying to, and it's the BBIP is just purely a way to be able to speak about something in a quick way, right? Like, and so in that way, it's always going to be lacking in its perfection and in being able to describe everything and encapsulate everything. So that's why I think it's always important to always kind of go back and revisit terms and make sure, hey, times have changed. People are thinking differently. Is this term still adequate to what we want to say? Yeah. And so when we're thinking about Black, Brown, and Indigenous people, it was, after talking with Brandy about the ways colonization has occurred, and her idea of like there's like three ways that colonization has happened to people. Like either they were the commodity in the colonization that were used for it to happen, they were literally erased during colonization, or they are like, I don't want to say the byproduct, or they were absorbed into the colonization, So that's how it's literally describing those three things: Black, Brown, Indigenous people. But now the way it works today is we're talking about like marginalization, and that kind of people who are being racialized and marginalized, and that includes Asians, and so they don't fit in those three kinds of things, even though maybe Asians in the sense like in China they weren't fully colonized, so that can't be part of that definition. I don't know, it's just so
Yeah,
it's so
yeah,
much to think and to try to fix. So
yeah.
I literally just went, well, maybe we should say racialized and marginalized people whenever we're talking about it, but then I don't know.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
also
know. I
that's
don't
always
know.
so tricky too, because like every time, I mean, I understand the intention of the word, but the
Mm-hmm.
impact is always just like,
Right.
once again, oh no, these poor people. Or just
Right,
like
right.
the less, it's as coded, I feel, as sometimes
Mm.
urban is, or
Mm-hmm.
Title I for
Mm.
schools. But
Yeah.
it's almost a more vast coding.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah, like it's like you can't find a word that isn't empowering but still trying to get across that, but these people are being treated differently and we need to be able to understand. I don't know, we need to be able to say it when it's happening. I
yeah.
don't Fix it, Alice, fix it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean, and then it's always interesting to consider I guess for me as an Asian American, like
Mm-hmm.
that whole dichotomy of like being Asian versus being Asian American. That goes into, how Asian are you? Are you Asian enough? Can you be both? That's a whole
Mm-hmm.
nother crazy rabbit hole. And then I'm just reminded by that the term Asian American is still really new. It's
Mm.
only 60 years old, basically since the civil rights movement.
Uh-huh.
And so it's not even like in America, Asian American as an identity is a fairly new concept in comparison to a lot of other identities.
Right.
But then how does that play into?
Yeah, I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that that's a fairly new term, just like
Yeah,
60
I
years
think
old.
yeah, like 1967, I want to
Mm-hmm.
say.
Mm-hmm.
Just and there was like political power to using that term as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to just saying we're a group of Chinese plus Korean plus whoever
Right.
people. It was more of
Mm-hmm.
a unifying term. But then what is said now a lot is that the term Asian American has lost its power, its initial activist power, and has become more bought into just overall identity. Not
Mm-hmm.
to say that that's necessarily bad, but it doesn't have the same charge as it used to
Right.
be when it was first used. And that is the other danger of terms, I feel, right? Like once you
Right.
create a term for a certain purpose, and even though that purpose can be extremely charged or extremely focused, over
Mm-hmm.
time, what does happen to a term?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Maybe it's just we always have to revisit and just keep on talking. I don't know.
Yeah, I think
Yeah. Yeah.
so. I think,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah, because over time, things are going to continue to be outdated
Mm-hmm.
inevitably, but then what does that look like in terms of the decolonizing work is always interesting to kind of, I don't know, think through in that
Mm-hmm.
term.
Yeah, yeah. And even I think we even talked about it too, just kind of before this, about the idea of like, well, maybe it's just we need to be more clear about the definition and what it's being used for. Because I think even that there's people who aren't even sure of how we're using it or what it stands for and things like that. So I don't know. But
Yeah.
more than anything, it was just the idea, like there were Asian Americans who were like, hey, so what's up with this? And I don't feel like I'm part of it. And that really was like, oh, we need to talk about it then.
Yeah, well, how did that make you feel, if you don't mind me asking, just
Sure. Yeah.
when you
Well,
got these responses?
yeah, I was like, well, first kind of like, yeah, you're right. Oh, I was like, totally my bad. Like I completely just steamrolled that. I didn't even, like, it didn't even enter into the realm of possibility that that was something I could have, it was just, it's arrogant. It was really arrogant. I felt like it was arrogant. And thankfully I was able to hear it and kind of reflect on it and not like decide to put my heels in and say, no, it's going to be this because, I mean, that's just not good. So, I was embarrassed too. I was embarrassed. Like I should have caught that. So.
I don't think you should say that you should have caught that, because if you personally identify with um, being brown, then and feeling that that encapsulates everyone who you want
Mm,
it to, then it's it's that danger of like you don't know what you don't know.
yeah, it's totally that.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so don't be so hard on yourself.
Oh, well, that's just how I roll, though. Because and it's in the service of making things better, so it's okay. I can take some hits and get knocked on my bum for a bit. It's all good. It's all good. But the moment I don't think I can, that's when I worry. And I'm like, no, somebody needs to put me in my place, kind of thing. And that's why I have you and Brandy and all those people at DTMR. I mean, it's just the more you talk to each other, I think, is probably when you circumvent those things and
Yeah, and
at
like
least
real
you,
life talk like
yeah,
this. Well,
yeah.
as real life as it can get, as
Right,
opposed to
right.
just like, because even just like text message exchanges or just
Mm-hmm.
reading something, it's just not the same as
No,
actually verbalizing your thoughts like
yeah.
without interruption.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, and that's where you learn if you really know what you're talking about too,
Yeah,
Yeah, like you start
for
talking and then
sure.
you're like, I don't know if you've ever been like in the middle of a sentence, you're like, I don't know where this is gonna go
Yep,
now. How do I
yep.
stop?
Way too many times, for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
For
So
sure.
you're like, oh, I don't know that as well as I thought I did. So
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, yeah.
So what are you thinking now?
Well, I'm thinking BBIA, so Black, Brown, Indigenous, Asian. I think is what I'm is where we're going to head, and I kind of threw that out to Brandy, and I know we've talked a little bit about it, and I think that feels good right now. Who knows what it's gonna, if we're gonna find something better in 6 months or 3 months or a year or something like that. Um, but I feel like it's important to listen to those voices who are saying that we don't feel represented in that, and we need to rectify that. So I don't know. How do you feel about that?
I like it.
You like it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I definitely just personally really identify with being Asian and Asian American.
Mm-hmm.
So just like kind of how you said before, there's no other word that can really describe what I am. I mean, AAPI is also another acronym.
Right.
So, but that's like four more letters. So three more letters than adding an A
Yeah, yeah.
to be like inclusive in that way. But I really feel like that just adding A is a really great place to be, because
Mm-hmm.
then I do feel included and I don't have to, I guess personally, I don't have to reckon with like, oh, well, I'm
Right.
scientifically brown, but
Right.
I'm like internally, I don't feel brown, nor am I really yellow.
Yeah,
So,
if you
and why
have
always just colors? It's not just, I mean, it is, but it's not, yeah. But
yeah, if you have
I'm
to
for it.
good. If you have to cognate how you fit in a word, I don't know if that's a good thing, right? If you have to like, I think I belong there. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's not good.
it was interesting because earlier this year, we were in school, I was chatting with other teachers about skin tones and how kids choose to color
Mm. Mm.
and draw themselves. And this is beyond the black, white, and brown colors only. Like, what are
Mhm.
other shades? And I really
Mhm.
just didn't know how I felt when someone might say like, oh, well, you're vanilla, or you're hazelnut, or like, okay, so now I'm food. I'm not sure I love that either. But then it's so weird because I actually was thinking like, I think my skin color is close to the color of wonton skins. Um,
Cooked or not cooked?
well, I'm really dark right now because I tan really easily,
Uh-huh.
like just from being in the sun. But
Uh-huh.
it varies. The cooking of the wonton
or
varies.
or just the edges, like
Yeah,
the
yeah,
crispy
maybe
edges.
just the crispy edges right now is where I am. But then it was so strange to say out loud that like, am I then the color of wontons, or is that a Crayola crayon that I
Right.
need to use to color myself? And then but then it's like I know that's the colonized perspective also
Mm.
talking, because why can't I be
Mm.
that without it sounding like I'm racializing myself through
Right.
food or
Through food.
color.
Mm-hmm.
But I digress.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just think it's always like what you said just made a lot of sense right now of like, why do I have to reckon with putting
Mm-hmm.
my identity within one word if
Right.
I don't
Right.
feel like it fits?
Yeah. 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 And I feel like it's when you're talking and you have the knowledge and you have the understanding, then you should just say what the person is or how they identify, and in fact, you should probably even let them identify themselves before you just make the assumption, right? And
Yeah.
that might not even be your information to know, like, I don't know. But when we're talking about a big term and we're trying to say something in conversation, that's where it's like we got to figure out something to say, a placeholder. I don't know. Maybe we just need to make up a whole other word.
No, I
Like
like
that just that doesn't exist.
yeah, yeah, maybe in another language.
Maybe.
Many,
Yeah.
many symbols.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but I really do like BBIA as being more
Mhm.
inclusive. I definitely feel seen and within without having to go through like the
Right.
deep, intense thought process
Yeah.
of steps. Yeah,
Yeah.
like the census or something. Do you feel more settled with BBIA?
I do. I do. I do. It's just now it's like, okay, how do we say it? Like, I guess we just say it. Hey, we're just doing this now. I don't, like, how is the best way to roll it out and to, no, like, roll it out. That sounds gross. To introduce it and to start getting it in there. So, and I think it's just being, hey, you know what? Here we go. And
Yeah,
just, yeah,
yeah, that's it, I think.
I think it is. Yeah.